Two middle-aged guys try to work it all out. Two middle-aged guys try to work it all out. Two middle-aged guys try to work it all out.
Hey everybody, this is Dave, and welcome to Two Middle-Aged Guys Trying to Work It All Out. With me, as always, is my good friend...
Chris.
Hi Chris, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Dave. How are you?
Good. I introduced myself. Hi Chris, like yeah, I don't really... Hi, how you doing, buddy?
I feel like I'm the interviewee of the show now. Like you've brought me out from backstage and you're about to ask me like some very inside the actor studio questions.
When you get to heaven, what does he always say? Like, what do you hope they say to you? Or I don't know that. Yeah.
What do you want to hear God say or something like
right.
that? Yeah. Yeah, the 11 questions or 12 questions,
yes.
Whatever it is. Yeah.
Well, okay. All right. Well, that's our inside the actor studio bit. I hope everyone enjoyed that. Everyone was like, what is that?
We can just call that the Inside the Actors Studio episode. We don't need to cover that one. Scratch that off the list, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, that's right. I think we got it all. Does anyone under 30 know what that is?
No.
Probably
no, I don't.
not.
And under 30 and did not have the Bravo network.
That's right, yeah. If we have any listeners left, we can continue with this episode.
And what is this episode about, Dave?
Well, this episode is about honestly, it's the greatest film franchise in the history of film franchise. There's none that are better than what we're going to talk about.
Wow.
I probably am overselling it. This is a film franchise. That's probably a way to describe it. It's one that I really like, and I think that you have appreciation for it too. It's not the greatest, right? I mean, it's not up there with Star Wars or Lord of the Rings or that very popular film franchise, Godfather. If you remember, Disney just bought the Godfather franchise, and Godfather Phase 2 is coming.
Yeah, absolutely. They've commissioned J.J. Abrams to write 3 scripts.
Yeah,
but he can't write them all at once. He's got to completely film one movie before moving on to write the next script.
They'll hire somebody else to write it. They'll get fired, and he'll come in a day to write a script, and that'll be Godfather Phase 2, Godfather Part 5. No, this is another film franchise, one that I really enjoy, and that is the Alien film franchise, which also includes the film Prometheus, which is not an alien film by title, but is an alien film in every other way. I think you would agree.
Yeah, absolutely, I would agree. But we're going to have a lot to say about Prometheus.
Yeah, absolutely. Ground rules, we're not, I will mention it, we are not going to go deep on Predator. So if you really, really love Aliens versus Predator, I don't think there's anyone out there that does, but if there is someone and they're hoping for it in this episode, sorry, you'll get just a little tiny bit of talk about that. But
James Cameron loves it.
Does he?
Did you see that in any of your research? He was working on Alien 5, and they announced Alien vs. Predator, and he's like, forget it, I'm done. That's the worst idea ever. And then when it came out, he's like, actually, that was a pretty good movie, which is a weird thing to hear James Cameron say.
Yeah, he doesn't say that about anything. I mean, I would imagine he had some very harsh words for, like, Oppenheimer. I would imagine he would, because he's just not a very generous type fellow.
Well, it doesn't take place on Pandora either, so...
Oh my gosh, yeah. That's it. That would have... If Oppenheimer had been played by a blue guy, a tall, lanky blue guy, and it was in 3D, maybe it would have been better. Who am I to say? No, we're going to be talking about Alien today, and yes, that means we will talk about Ridley Scott. Sir Ridley Scott. And yes, that means we will talk about James Cameron. So I think, though, that leads into, before we get into it, I have a little game for you, because we are going to be talking about those folks. And I think that it's undoubtedly it's going to come up. We are going to have to make a choice of which one we like better, right? These are two movies, when you talk about sequels that may potentially be better than their original, these two movies, Alien and Aliens, come up, right? Like, I was joking about it, but Godfather 1, Godfather 2, that comes up. Star Wars A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back. It's one of those, right? And so I thought, before we dove into it, let's maybe do just a quick comparison between a couple of 3, specifically, of Ridley Scott's movies compared to a couple of James Cameron movies, just to kind of get a sense, Chris, of where you are on your Ridley Scott, James Cameron, comparisons, and where you are as in terms of being a fan of both those two directors. Now, Ridley Scott has literally 3 times as many movies in his back catalog as does James Cameron. So I had to be a little bit selective in what I chose here. So I hope this works. But if you don't mind, I'd like to start out with this little game.
Sounds fun. Let's do it.
All right. First one, Alien, made by Ridley Scott, compared to True Lies, made by James Cameron.
I'm going to go with Alien, Ridley Scott.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm absolutely
all right.
sure.
That's, listen, all right. I tend to agree.
There are True Lies fans out there. Don't get me wrong, and that's fine, but I'm going to pick Alien.
Well, like I said, he doesn't have as many to choose from. So I had to,
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
Sure. Next one, Blade Runner, made by Ridley Scott versus True Lies, made by James Cameron.
I'm going to go Blade Runner, Ridley Scott.
Okay. Again, bold. I'm just going to say that, bold, that you're giving Ridley 2 out of the 3. He is a sir.
We'll see how the third one goes.
Well, the third one is Ridley Scott's The Martian versus True Lies by James Cameron.
That is legitimately a tougher call for me.
It is it? Okay, well, I didn't intend for it to be, I guess.
I'm actually not a fan of The Martian. I find that whole story, I don't like it. I'm not a fan. So I might actually go True Lies on this one.
All right. This blew up in my face with comedy that...
hey, 2 out of 3 for Scott.
Right.
That's not bad.
What don't you like about The Martian? I'm just curious. What don't you like about The Martian?
I did not like the book at all. Like, the book really frustrated me.
I enjoyed the book.
Did you really? Okay.
I did.
that's
I'm
fair.
not going to call it high art, but I did enjoy the book.
No, it frustrated me the way it was written, the characterization. I just didn't like it at all. And to be completely honest, I've never seen the film. So maybe if the film goes completely different from the book, or maybe approaching it visually as opposed to reading the novel, I may change my answer. But hey, True Lies, for what it is, being a popcorn movie, it's not bad.
Well, sure. I don't agree, but I think True Lies is pretty awful. But that said, I think you should try The Martian because the movie and the book are pretty different experiences. I can understand a little bit what you stated about it's not a great book. It's not super well written, but I did like it. But the movie is very different. It doesn't present the challenges in the same way. There's no tension to the book, The Martian, because it's told from his perspective. So
right.
Every page you turn, you're like, well, if I'm turning the page, he's still alive, the movie's a little bit different. So I think you might enjoy it. And Matt Damon, I just like Matt Damon. He made this after Interstellar. And in my mind, I always thought he enjoyed being on the Interstellar and thought, hey, I'll make my own movie with another good director, not as good. And I'll get a helmet to wear, and it's his giant Ridley Scott space helmets, which is kind of his signature. So, you should check out The Martian.
All right, well, I may.
It is not a bad movie.
I'll report back if it usurps True Lies on this list of preferences.
All right, I think it will. I really think it will. But also part of that is just I dislike True Lies. I just think it's just awful. Let's talk about the films. Alien, the films,
yes.
not Alien, the novelizations of the films. That would have been really, really odd for us to go.
A more niche conversation.
More niche, yes. In 1979, a director who was not a sir at the time, but he had a few films under his belt. The Duelist, I can't remember all of them that he had. Sir Ridley Scott, not a sir, made the film Alien. Written by Dan O'Bannon from Dark Star fame. I'm sure you've seen Dark Star. So Dan O'Bannon wrote this story, and it's the classic horror movie set in space. Tell me what your thoughts are on this movie. Do you love this movie?
Love is a strong word. I have grown in my appreciation of this film. And I used to dismiss it because it is very much a horror movie, right? Like it's made with those stylistic choices. It follows that kind of structure. And I'm not big into horror movies. So I saw Alien and always thought, well, yeah, I'm more into the science fiction side of things than I am the horror movie side of things. So this is not one of my favorite movies. However, from the first moment I watched it, I mean, the production design is flawless.
Oh,
in
yeah.
this film. It is.
Yeah, the spaceship,
It's
the
gorgeous.
internals of the Nostromo, just beautiful. All the leather tucked
Yeah,
and rolled
absolutely.
under the. It's just so cool looking.
Yeah, which is one of the things that Scott really excels at. I mean, his as a production designer, that man is amazing, and he's on top of it, and he's got one of the greatest eyes in Hollywood. The other thing I really liked about this film from the jump is Sigourney Weaver, who I think is a wonderful actress. She's wonderful in Alien, and I think arguably she is the greatest female protagonist of all time, and that starts here in Alien. So it is truly a great movie. It's a movie, like I said, I've grown in appreciation for. I will rewatch it. Like, it's not one that I'm just like, oh, I saw it because it's kind of one of those movies you have to see. It's in my regular rotation, and I do enjoy it and appreciate it. But it took me some time, right? Like, my first brush with Alien, I was not as in love with it or as appreciative of it as I am now.
So you mentioned you mentioned. Take that back. You can edit that out because you mentioned Sigourney Weaver and her character of Ripley, Lieutenant Ripley, being one of the best female protagonists of all time. So you would say better than Sarah Connor or better than Princess Leia? It's a weird sentence. I never thought I would say that out loud.
Yes, but I understand your meaning, and I would say that. I would say that Ripley is the stronger character. She's the more interesting character, and she is the tougher character. I mean, like, I think she could take Sarah Connor in a fight.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, and I agree. I think that she is probably the best. Certainly, and I would say of the 70s, 80s, just heroes in general, I think she's probably like in the top 3, right? She's up there with like a Luke Skywalker, right? I mean, she really is that good. I'm not like a big Sigourney Weaver fan outside of this series, but I would say that, her portrayal of this character, and specifically in this movie and in one other movie we'll talk about in a little bit, is just so good. It's a huge part of the success of the movie, right? It's as much of the success, I think, goes with Sigourney and the way she played that character, as does go with the Alien. I think.
Yeah.
As good as Sigourney Weaver is, she's great. She leads it. I think that you've also got John Hurt playing Kane, and he doesn't get a ton of screen time, but I mean, anything with John Hurt in it, he kind of elevates. You've got Harry Dean Stanton as Space Trucker #1 Brett. You've got Tom Skerritt as Dallas, who is the Captain Dallas. And I think so interesting about his role is he's the captain, he's the leader, but he's not a loudmouth. He listens to other people. He's quiet and calm. He's a different kind of leader for that era of movies, and or even in other eras as well. So I really enjoyed his portrayal. And then of course you cannot leave out Ian Holm, our sweet Bilbo, as Ash, the terrifying synthetic. And it's so interesting watching this, and then watching him 20 years later play the lovable sweet Bilbo. He can play both sides, that cold, chilling terror. I actually, in some ways, he is as scary as the Alien, because just like the Alien, right? I mean, the Alien he's just doing what he's programmed to do, which is kill everything he comes in contact with. And Ash is just doing what he's programmed to do, which is, bring the alien back at any cost. Everyone's expendable. The crew is expendable, I believe is what Mother said. It's such a great cast.
No, I agree. And you didn't mention Yaphet Kotto, who
I had him listed. I was like, what else could I say Yaphet Kotto's been? I know he's been in other stuff, but I cannot remember a single thing he's been in. He
was in Live and Let Die, which is not a great role that he would probably prefer I mention. But he certainly has a long career of Hollywood, a lot of different roles. but not a name you hear a lot recently. I
No.
mean, there aren't massive Yaphet Kotto retrospectives, which is too bad. But he's great in the movie, and
He is Space Trucker #2, Parker.
yeah, exactly. So but that idea, though, I mean, you keep referring to them as space truckers, like taking that kind of character and putting them in science fiction was such a novel thing to do in 70. I mean, heck, it's kind of a novel thing to do now, right? Like, you don't see a lot of that outside of the Alien franchise, the blue collar science fiction
Yep.
character. So, I mean, it's a really interesting movie. If you look into the history of it, Dan O'Bannon really ushered this thing along, right? I mean, this was a passion project of his. He worked on the script. He's the guy that found Geiger to do the design, and then when Scott came aboard, like the studios were like, oh, we don't want to use this Geiger guy, and O'Bannon went to bat for him and gave Scott some of the designs that Geiger had done, and then Scott was just like, oh, this is the guy, and then Scott was able to strong arm the studios into using him. So
and that's such a critical part of the movie. Is,
my goodness, absolutely.
Geiger's designs for the creature, but not only the creature, but the alien spacecraft, which is terrifying as well. You mentioned O'Bannon. Curious, have you ever read Dan O'Bannon's original script for this that then got polished up? Okay, so I did. So there's a backstory to this because Dan O'Bannon wrote the script and then it went through some polishing. Walter Hill revised it considerably. So I read the original script, and because I read something that said it was originally sort of like it had some comedy elements to it. I'm like, no. But I did. I read the original script, and it's not a very good script. I was really shocked at every bit of dialogue is different. There is no dialogue that survived. All of the main characters were male, and the protagonist of the story was male. It did have a note in there that females, they could be switched out, but it was written as males. It didn't have an Ash or a synthetic character. And only the major beats remained. They landed on the planet. They got an alien. The alien busted out of his chest. They blew it out of an airlock, and he survived. So it was really quite an experience to read that script and be like, oh, man, this dialogue's awful. If there's comedy here, it's not funny. And then to see it, what it became, I'm like, well, it really got polished up a lot in its later. And I'm sure that's true. A lot of scripts go through that. I'm sure. I'm not an expert, but this one was like night and day different. If they had filmed the original script as it was written, we would not be talking about these films today because it would be forgotten. We might have talked about it in forgotten movies, and not on something that started a franchise because it was not very good.
That's interesting. I'm glad that you read that because I did not have that information to share. All that I knew about O'Bannon is just how hard he pushed to get this movie made, and I admire people when they do that. So it sounds like I don't know the full history. Like, I don't know if Bannon was there through the entire production, or if once Scott got a hold of it and then started changing the script, if he bailed or if he stuck around and realized, hey, these people are making this idea better.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. But I find that most of my favorite movies have a story like that, like where you start with the seed of an idea, but then the entire cast and crew coming together to elevate it, and that turns it into an amazing movie that just one human being themselves could not come up with. And I think Alien has a lot of elements of that because you started with this really strong idea, but as you said, if Geiger hadn't come along and done those designs, I likewise don't think we would be talking about this series now either. I mean, I think that they have cemented it in popular culture just from a visual perspective. And regardless of how strong the movie is, I think it would have had a great deal of success based solely on how cool that creature looks.
Oh, yeah. And I think that everybody, trying to make a monster movie today, particularly with a space twist on it, they only wish they could come up with a design as beautiful as it's beautiful. But I think you know what I mean. But right, as striking and as effective and unique as what Giger. Big G is what I'll call him, because I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. What he came up with, something else that was really interesting that I did not realize until I started to do the research for this. Did you know that they never call the company Weyland-Yutani in the movie Alien? They just call it the company. There's no Weyland-Yutani logos, symbols, anywhere.
I did not know that.
That's something that came later in the series. I'll back up just a bit because you mentioned horror movies. You don't like horror movies. I don't love horror movies either. But this one is so good and scary. And it has all of the good stuff about, liking to be scared, I guess, if people like that. But it doesn't really have the gore. It doesn't have no one's tortured in it, right? You know what I mean? It's just effectively scary. It's dread. Your brain is, you put yourself in that position, like, oh, that's terrifying. There's a cat that is constantly put in danger that you're always worried that Jonesy is going to get eaten or had been infected by the alien, right? But there's all those things, but it's not like gross, right? I mean, the creature itself's got some gross stuff with things like slobber or whatever, and the acid, but it's not it's not gory, and it's not gory for the sake of being gory, right? It's got this alien otherness to it that is really neat.
So I'll push back on that just a touch, which is to say that initial chest bursting scene, that's pretty gory. And that's intentional.
True. Yeah, I forgot that was in the movie. No, I'm just kidding.
But that's part of Scott's brilliance, is because he put all of his chips in that scene, right? And so it's not like a slasher film where it's just gore, 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 gore.
Right, one kill after another.
Right, but instead in Alien, you've got this moment that is really intense, but it is a linchpin of the story and of the film, and it makes everything that comes before it more meaningful, and it makes everything that comes after it more suspenseful. To say it's not a gory movie, I don't know if I'd go that far, because it does have elements of that, but it's used well.
Well, compared to modern horror films that I've seen where the gore is just, over the top ridiculous, right? And this used it very strategically. There's some jump scary type stuff, right? When the alien kills Dallas when he's going up in the air shafts, that's a scary jump type moment, right? But it works so well because that was the first glimpse you get of the alien, and you don't get a lot of good views of him throughout the film at all, which is so smart, right? Because that makes him more scary and mysterious. And there's a lot of, speaking of mystery, there's a ton of mystery throughout the film, right? The planet that they land on, LV-426, where the distress signal's from, the aliens didn't set the distress signal. Someone did. You got the big thing setting in the thing with the thing on its face. The thing, sometimes known as the space jockey, right? But you get that big, it's like, what the heck is that? Wow, I want to know all about this thing. So you've got, there's a lot of mystery going on, and it does it makes the movie like you watch the movie's over, it's a complete story, but it's like, I want to know everything that happened before and everything that's going to happen after. You want to know more. It's a world that leaves you just like the sense of I want to complete this, right? So I want more information about this universe here that they gave us just a glimpse into.
I'll mention something about the space jockey, and I'll have more to say about him later.
I can't imagine why.
No, well, I have some thoughts. Okay. But to me, the design of the space jockey is my absolute favorite from the film. Like, I prefer that even to the xenomorph, because it is so evocative. It's so mysterious. And when they land on that planet, they go into that big cavernous room, and you just see this weird thing sitting on the chair. I mean, that is so interesting to me. And I can understand wanting to make a movie where you explore that further, right? But as, and I'm thinking back to the first time I watched Alien, and I'm going through this movie, and I know the beats of the story, so I know what I'm expecting, but I see that, and that was just completely a breathtaking moment, and I love those elements, and I love it when films do that, and they kind of create this backstory without the explanation, because then that allows you to kind of accept this as a living, breathing world that's got more to it than just something that is plotted A to B to C.
You just saw a glimpse of it. The time you're watching that, you're thinking, nothing could ever ruin this. Nothing. And then Ridley Scott was like, just hang on. Give me 30 years. I'll come back and see what I can do. It really was good. So we were talking a little bit about Dan O'Bannon. We were talking about, some of his ideas. Do you know, when Dan penned the script, his original title was Star Beast. On one of my trips to Goodwill, I go around the Goodwills in the area. I buy up a bunch of DVDs and Blu-rays just so I can throw them on the bonfire in the backyard. My raging DVD and Blu-ray bonfire. That the neighborhood doesn't like it. I don't care, right? I'm on a mission to rid the world of physical media. So I happened to get my hands on an Alien quadrilogy set. And but it was a little different. I was like, what the heck? And then as I cracked it open and I looked at it, it's from Egypt. And I was like, whoa, I wouldn't have even guessed. So I looked at the special features. I looked at it, I was like, yeah, this is, the Egyptian Alien quadrilogy. It looks like everything else. But some of the special features were different. And I watched one of them. It had a behind the scenes, a making of that just had a lot of anyways, it had a lot of casual stuff, right? Behind the scenes things. And it had a little snippet of it where they were talking about how they were going to title the movie. And it's really interesting, some of the stuff they went through and how they came upon the iconic name Alien. Because they never say the word alien in the movie, right? So it came from somewhere else. Well, now I could show you and our listeners an exclusive Egyptian alien special feature that the rest of the world probably hasn't seen. And they probably haven't seen it in Egypt in 20 years. So if you want to roll that.
We still don't have a title for this yet, John.
Ridley, I have a few ideas.
Well, old boy, let's hear them.
Egg sac creature from the dark void.
Ah, that's okay. What else?
Face sucker of the lost moon.
Better. I was thinking about chest punch out monster from space.
Niet, Steiling, Stingling, Sliling, Rising.
I know, Giga, you don't like that one.
How about space truckers who wear really tiny small underwear versus the evil beast from a distant sun?
I love that, I do, but it won't fit on a marquee.
Well, hey, guys.
Oh, it's Bill the intern.
Hey, Mr. Hurt, Mr. Scott.
That's so Ridley to you.
Well, congratulations. I did not know you were knighted.
I haven't been, yet. Bill, can you excuse us? John and I were discussing possible titles and...
I heard about that. Yeah, I have an idea.
Sure, Bill. Let's hear it.
Alien.
Zot.
Bill, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard.
Bill, we can't take you seriously. You're not even smoking a cigarette. Well, I just thought it was a simple and clear way to convey the otherness of our monster. And if we take a look at it...
Bill, be a good lad and fetch us some coffee. Stick to what you know.
Oh, okay.
So, Alien?
I'll smoke to that.
That's amazing, and you've got to stop burning these things, Dave. I mean, that's important film history.
I took it right out of the disc player. I cracked it over my knee. I walked outside and tossed it in the fire.
Terrible.
I got some burns on my hands. Yeah, that's we had to go to the hospital right after. I don't have use of my left hand anymore. It's but it's worth it. It's worth it. Everybody's going to use digital media. Yep.
All right. Well,
but now, hey, listen. You all know the story of how Alien got its title. Better than some of those others. Although they were a little on the nose, but they weren't bad. Some of the ideas.
I mean, especially John Hurt coming up with some.
John Hurt was a very creative guy.
No doubt. Well, the next film borrowed from that title and kind of expanded upon that title, if you could say. And I'm talking about the James Cameron sequel, Aliens, because it's more than one. It's plural. Plural aliens. Yes.
Plural. Joke about it. That's a pretty good title. It's a pretty smart a thing. I wonder who James Cameron stole that from. Probably Harlan Ellison.
Yeah, well, there's some history there. I find it a bit of a confusing title, to be honest with you, just because in conversation, it's so hard to distinguish. And I always find myself talking to people and I'm like aliens and I'm, just hitting that S so hard so they know I'm talking about the second film and not the first one.
And then they say, please stop talking to me about science fiction
They do.
movies. That's usually how my conversation, just please leave
But
me
I've
alone.
twisted it, okay? So I've gotten smarter in my old age and I no longer say aliens. Instead, I say James Cameron's sequel to Alien. Because that's much simpler, and it's to the point and people understand it. But anyway.
You mean Alien 2?
You can't call it that. That's not the
angry.
thing. Yeah, no. So, but this is Cameron's take on Alien. And what do you feel about Aliens, Dave?
Oh, goodness. Well, it's set 57 years after Alien. Alien 2 is. And how do I feel about it? Well, gosh. So it is a good movie. It's an interesting thing to take it in a different direction, right? To make it more action-y. But also there's a little bit of world building there, right? Weyland-Yutani gets its name. The company becomes a character, which is very important, right? Because Paul Reiser is not a very good villain. And so the company being the villain is more effective than Paul Reiser being it. So Paul Reiser from Mad About You, and I don't know what else, probably nothing else. So I think you did two things, this movie and that. But no, I like it. I don't dislike it. In fact, it's probably my favorite James Cameron movie. It is my favorite James Cameron movie. No question about it now that I say that. But certainly I prefer Alien. I think it looks better. I think it is just a little. I won't say it's more fun because I think Aliens is a lot of fun. I just think Alien is a better movie. But that said, I do like Aliens a lot. Which of the two do you prefer? Now, since we're here, let's just talk about it.
That's a big question that you just laid on me. I would say at this stage of my life, I prefer Alien more. When I was first introduced to the series, I would not have said that. I would have picked Aliens all day long. Because, again, going back to my lack of appreciation of horror movies, I'm totally okay with the war movie, right? And this is Vietnam in space. I mean, that's kind of the elevator pitch for Aliens. And I think Cameron deserves credit for making that choice, for making it different. And if you do any of the reading, it was very intentional because Cameron is on record as telling Scott, I can't do the horror movie thing because I can't do it better than you, so I'm going to do the war movie thing. And Scott, from all accounts, was behind that decision. He's like, no, good idea.
It does make sense, right?
It does make sense.
Take a bit of a turn.
But I would say that the first film has something to say. And I think the second film is popcorn, which is kind of Cameron's style, right? I don't think it is as deep as a film. I think it's very good. I think it's very competently made. It's very enjoyable. Sigourney Weaver is still excellent in it. I mean, the whole cast is excellent. It's a very well cast movie, very well shot movie. You are right that Alien looks better, even being an earlier film, but it's more environmentally set. Whereas Aliens kind of feels like, we just need some space to shoot some guns.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go out on the limb, and I'm going to say Alien is the better of the films. But you can't go wrong with Aliens. It's a good film.
It's a good film. It is, and it's got some great casting. I mean, there's a through line here in many of these movies. There's really good cast here, right? Michael Biehn as Corporal Hicks is fantastic. We love Michael Biehn on this podcast. Tombstone. Even the Terminator, right, which is my second favorite James Cameron movie, which means I like approximately 2 James Cameron movies a lot. He's great in that. So he's a good actor. He's well cast as Corporal Hicks. There were, I think, 2 or 3 other people they went through to get him. Including filming with another actor. I think James Remar, was not a well-known actor. He'd filmed for a few days before he was let go because he had an issue with drugs. Is the stories that I've read. Bain came in and he didn't get to participate in the training that they did, the boot camp type stuff they did. But he was great as Corporal Hicks. Lance Hendrickson. Not Lance Henderson. Lance Henderson is an insurance salesman from Boise, Idaho. Lance Henderson is great as the kind synthetic Bishop, right? Yeah. A different take on it. You got that evil, icy stare Ash, and now you've got a kind, empathetic Bishop. And I think that tension between him and Ripley is actually... some of the better acting and writing that's in the film is between him and Ripley, and the issue that they have, because all Ripley remembers is, because she didn't know anything about synthetics, because they did not really exist. They were not common. Thanks, thanks Ridley Scott. Well, you'll understand this when we get to a little bit later. But yeah, her experience was Ash. And now, she's got to warm up to Bishop, and he has to prove himself to her. And then, of course, you get, Bill Paxton, who's just fantastic in the movie.
Game over, man.
Game over is iconic. Iconic. It's an action movie. It's Space Marines versus aliens. Yeah. And that is a lot of fun. It's more fun than Alien. I just don't think when you stack it up, it's a better movie experience.
I think that's fair.
And I don't know, have you ever watched the director's cut
I have.
of Aliens?
Yep.
Okay. So I think that the extra scenes definitely help this movie. They don't help all movies. And after rewatching Alien, the director's cut and the regular one, I did a 180, came back around. I think the theatrical is better on Alien. I think that they left out that scene wisely, with all of the crew members being attached to the wall by the alien and in pain. That was gratuitous and unnecessary. But the director's cut, adding the extra beginning with Newt's parents, and the Century scene with the automatic guns was really, it was needed. It made the movie more complete.
I don't know that it was needed. They're good scenes. They're neat scenes. They're entertaining scenes. But I would not begrudge anyone for just pick up a copy of Aliens, throw it in. You're going to be fine, right? It's not super critical, but also having them added or removed, you're not losing anything of the film. And I think a lot of times where they do recuts, there are reasons, and you can strongly prefer one or the other. To me, this one is a wash. Like I'll take either of them and I'll be happy.
Now, I will say this: I did not the lift loader fight at the end between Ripley and the Queen. I didn't like that scene. To me, that was like, oh, come on. I mean, I don't know. I just did not enjoy it. It felt too like Transformers, G.I. Joe, Saturday morning cartoon. It was just a step too far. To me, it's a little cringy. I don't know why, but I just did not like that scene.
I think for Cameron's universe, it fits and it makes sense, and it gives Ripley that big moment of heroic character, like audience stand up and cheer kind of a thing. But I don't know that that's appropriate to this franchise. Even as I say that, I hesitate because we're about to get into a lot of things that I don't know are appropriate to this franchise. But it's iconic. It's an action movie moment. I'll let him have it.
Well, the one thing I do know about the ending is it sets up a brilliant sequel with Ripley, Newt, and Hicks. I mean, that's the thing. Everybody left watching Aliens are like, all right, well, man, we're ready for the next one because that sequel is going to feature Ripley and Newt and Hicks, and I love these characters, and we're going to get more of them, and it's going to be awesome. So let's talk about Alien 3.
Yeah, you're going to be disappointed in how it starts because Newt and Hicks are dead.
Set directly after Alien. This is Alien 3, rather. Or excuse me, Aliens. Boy, you're right. That's a bad choice of a title. I just confused myself. But it is set directly after. No 57 years, no floating around in space for a long time. It's pretty quickly. We get right into Alien 3.
Yeah, so I only have two things to say about this movie. Number one, I find Alien as a biological weapon, I find that plot line kind of boring. And I know that goes back to the start of it, but like when they're really pushing that as the agenda of the film and kind of the engine that runs it, I don't care. Like, to me, that makes no sense at all of how anyone could look at a xenomorph and be like, oh, I know, biological weapon. Let's get one and trade a bunch of them. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
You can't control it.
Yeah, I just don't get it. And whoever writes all these sequels, they're just not letting go of that. But the other thing I'll say is I would love to see the version of this movie that Fincher got to make without studio interference. And that doesn't exist. And they can't even make it, right? Like, even if Fincher got over it and came back, they don't have the stuff because the studio just strong-armed him so much. But I would be interested in watching that version of Alien 3. Let Fincher do his version of it because Fincher is a pretty talented director. I'd like to see that.
Wasn't this, though, his first major motion picture?
It was.
Though? I mean, wasn't it? Or very early?
No, it was his first.
Yeah, so I don't know if he was quite at his, if he had all of his powers yet, right?
Absolutely. So, but
I'm not saying it wouldn't have been better, but yeah.
But you watch Alien 3, and visually, I have no complaints of this film. It's all...
No, it is a very grimy, ugly film, but it fits the setting, it fits the world. They're on a prison planet.
Right. The problems are all character, their editing, their pacing, their story. And I even if it would not have been as great of a movie, I would love to see what was Fincher thinking. And, we'll never get to see it, but that's fine. So the movie that we got, I think, is a mess. I have seen it once, and that's it.
First of all, I like this movie more than most, I think. And I think that it gets a lot of hate. But I really think that the hate comes from the movie that we didn't get, which was the film with Ripley, Hicks, and Toots, right? Which is what everyone wanted, which is what everyone thought they were going to get, and then they didn't get it. I think it's got some really good stuff. I think it's got a good cast. I think that this is, I will say, is easily equal to what, in terms of Ripley's characterization by Sigourney Weaver, is easily as good her acting as it is in Alien. I think she has a lot of stuff going on here, a lot of emotions, and I think that she does it very well. She sells it, and I did really enjoy parts of it. I had to take myself out of what I wanted and look at what I got and say, this is pretty good. I do have a question for you. Siskel and Ebert reviewed this movie. What do you think they gave it?
I think they gave it 2 thumbs down, if I'm not mistaken.
They did 2 thumbs down, and Fincher has disowned now, and it ends pretty definitively, right, with a sort of a Terminator 2 type ending.
Yeah.
With really, it is, right. It's her getting in the liquid metal, and then the alien busting out as she goes down to her hot, steamy death. I mean, I guess that's it. I guess it's the end of the franchise. Well, thanks for joining us for the podcast. There's no more movies to talk about.
Absolutely.
It ended right there.
Yeah, it did. And before we figure out what we're going to talk about for the next 20 minutes, I will say Alien 3 gave us an excellent video game adaptation with the Sega Genesis version of Alien 3.
Oh, that's a fun game.
That is a great
That's a ton
game.
of fun.
Yeah, so
it is.
So kudos for that. But now,
Thank you.
I guess we're done. Nothing else?
Yep, that's it. Oh, wait, Alien Resurrection came out in 1997.
Wait, Resurrection? That implies that Ripley is still there.
So this was directed by a fella named Jean-Pierre Jeunet. Is that how you say it? It doesn't matter. Yeah. The writer of Alien Resurrection was Joss Whedon.
Yes.
So if you wonder where things went bad, you can just remind yourself Joss Whedon wrote this. It's set 200 years after Alien 3. They've cloned Ripley, and they're trying to clone her to get queens and aliens and more stuff about bioweapons. Wayland Yutani is mentioned in it, but it was bought out by Walmart. I am not joking. That was in the movie. Joss Whedon typed that up in a script, did not he did not backspace over. That was stupid. I'm sorry. I'm embarrassed. I even typed that in the privacy of my own home. Nope, he put that in the movie. They filmed it. So I guess Fox got what they deserved with this really pretty poor movie. Danny Boyle was the first choice to direct this instead of Jean-Pierre Jeunet. I would I'm thinking, would that have been better? And I'm like, first of all, that would have probably not helped Danny Boyle's career. And I like Danny Boyle, so I'm kind of glad he stayed away from this. This is a terrible movie. Sigourney Weaver is phoning it in. She's not even trying. I do like Winona Ryder. She's not very good in this. I like Michael Wincott. He's not very good in this. I think there may be some other people that are of name, but I don't remember, because this is a bad movie.
Yeah. So on IMDb, in the quote section, I just wanted to read this because it cracks me up. Sigourney Weaver originally refused to do a 4th Alien film. When asked why she changed her mind, she replied, quote, "They basically drove a dump truck full of money to my house."
Okay, well, that's a good reason.
Yeah, but like the whole Super Ripley with alien DNA, not interested. One thing I'd really like to challenge the writers of alien films to do is to come up with a new way to kill the alien as opposed to blowing it out of an airlock. Let's just see what else we can come up with, guys. I think that might be fun. But I will say this movie has one redeeming factor. Can you guess what that is, Dave?
There is a guy in a wheelchair who makes a gun out of parts of his wheelchair. This is kind of cool.
No.
Aliens in the water?
Nope.
Then I have no idea.
Brad Dourif is in the movie.
Oh, is he? He's like the scientist guy.
Yes, he is. And phenomenal performance, let me just say. Even with very light material he had to work with, I believe him in that scientific role. I think he would really try to torture an alien. It's hands down the best performance of 1997.
Was he drinking the juice of Sefu? Was that helping his mind, his thoughts acquire speed?
When the camera was off, I'm sure he was. Yeah.
He was swigging the juice of Sefu and then putting makeup on it so you wouldn't see the little stuff on his lips. That's a Dune reference for those of you that don't know. I would hope our audience knows that. Yeah, this is not a good movie. I did forget he was in it, but when you said that, I was like, oh yeah, he was the scientist. I did a lot of rewatching to prep for this. My wife will tell you how annoying it was. The one movie I did not rewatch was Alien Resurrection because it's just not worth.
No,
I would have got nothing out of it. I would have said no more about it than saying what I did, having not seen it for a decade.
Agreed.
It's just rough.
Yeah.
So then we get like a 15-year break.
Yep. Something like that.
And then we get the Alien movie that's not an Alien movie, and that is in 2012. Sir Ridley Scott, he's a sir now, for real. Pretty sure he is by 2012. We'll just say he is. Comes back with Prometheus.
Yeah.
The prequel, set 33 years before Alien. This is there's a lot to talk about here.
I will start off and say I don't like this film. I find it pretentious. I find it uninteresting. I think Ridley Scott just wishes he had made 2001: A Space Odyssey, and that's what he decided to do with Prometheus. I don't like it as an origin story for the xenomorphs. I think that if we are to believe that this is the way they started, I think it cheapens the creature, and I think it taints all of the previous films that it was trying so hard to make more important, and I think it just utterly failed at that.
Let me try to put my feelings for it. I hate this movie, but I also love this movie. I have a really complicated relationship with this film. I think that this is the greatest bad movie ever made. Like, they took a terrible script and then they put a great director, an awesome cast, and everyone acted in it like they were, like this was something special. Even though it was just terribly written, right? But so it looks great, it feels great, you have great performances, but you've got a lot of really, really dumb ideas, like stupid. Like some of the dumbest things I've seen in a movie, ever, right? It's just really, really dumb. And so I call it the greatest bad movie ever made because I love it and I also hate it. But I think that the things that I love outshine the things that I hate. I would like to, if I could go over what I think some of the dumbest things in this movie are, maybe we could just kind of react to them. Sure. So the movie opens, right, with the engineers creating life on Earth, I guess. Yeah. So what I wrote down was, I'll seed this world with life by drinking this stuff and disintegrating. That thought went through, this was written by John Spates and Damon Lindelof, who I do not like Damon Lindelof. If you guys know anything about Lost, then you know why I don't like Damon Lindelof. So this was his idea, like, oh yeah, we're going to have these big engineer guys and they're going to drink that stuff and disintegrate. And then that's how life starts because that's, but then, right, we come to today, which is, which in this film today is like, 2080 something. Some archaeologists are looking around, poking around some caves all over the planet. And what they found was they found cave paintings with people pointing to the sky. And so let's find out where they're pointing to and let's go up there and let's meet God. That was their big idea. They're pointing to something. I bet that's where God lives. They found like 7 different, I think, paintings where they were all pointing. That is the stupidest thing ever.
Well, okay, somebody financed the trip. I mean, hey.
Well, yep, Mr. Whalen did. And so Mr. Whalen decided, this is my another point, let's put 2 morons in charge of my multi-trillion-dollar expedition. Those 2 morons being the 2 archaeologists who thought, hey, if there's pointing up to the sky, that probably means that's where God is. That makes sense, right? I was actually in the backyard a couple days ago. It was a nice sunny day. I pointed to a tree and my wife said, hey, over there, is that where God is? You were pointing at that. Is that where he... No, I was just saying that tree we got to put some, it's got a little bit of some ants on it. But then I realized, I was pointing at it. It's my bad, right? So do not point at things. Otherwise, people might get confused and think let's go over there and see God. That is so stupid.
Yeah.
Do you agree that that is stupid?
I do agree that that is stupid. And this conversation...
I have 10 more of these.
That's fine. My conversation for Prometheus is leading up to a question that I want to ask you. I'm very excited to hear your answer, but part of this factors into it. So I'm not going to say any more. What's your next one?
Well, okay, so these morons, they land on the planet. The ship is beautiful. The ship is the Prometheus. It's packed full of great actors. So, we've got Charlize Theron, who is the company's representative. You've got Idris Elba, who's the captain of the ship. You've got Michael Fassbender as David, the synthetic, who's, doing his synthetic thing. Which, by the way, this is 33 years before Alien, and people know about synthetics, which drives me nuts because it takes away all of the stuff about Ash being like, oh, what we have a robot on board? How could we have a robot on board? That, they shouldn't have been surprised. So bad decision. But I do love the character of David. I love Fassbender's performance of him. I like his Lawrence of Arabia, his wanting to be like him. He also rides his bicycle around a basketball goal and shoots basket. By the way, by 2080, if we're able to build spaceships with fully functional basketball goals and gyms, I gotta say, our technology is really, right now it's like, like $1 billion for every pound you put in space. If they're able to shoot basketball stadiums or basketball gyms up into space, we've really made it very far.
But Dave, have you forgotten of the connection to Alien Resurrection starting with the basketball sequence?
No, I have not. I just don't want to. Yeah.
See,
she shoots some baskets.
But it's symmetry. This is the detail Ridley Scott thinks in.
That was. I gotta say, I have to believe that was more of an accident than anything on purpose, because even he knows that Resurrection was awful. So they get down there. They're going to explore this cave. By the way, they're on LV-223. That is not the same planet. That's not LV-426.
Nope.
So we're on a totally different planet. The movie's just not making any sense at all. Maybe God moved? Maybe he relocated. He got the space U-Haul and he went, I want to go over from this other utterly horrible place to this other utterly horrible place. None of this makes sense. But anyway, so they get in there. They go down there with all their science, super smart guys. The guy with the map, there's a guy who has a map. He's the one who gets lost, by the way. The only person with a map gets lost. And with him, this guy who specializes in biology, he gets lost with him, and then they interact with an alien snake, and they decide to play with it. And it's like, this is the stupidest thing in the world. This is not how people would react, but they had to. I guess they had to do this to make the plot move forward. Oh, the geologist guy, the one who got lost, also has weed in his spacesuit, and I'm like, what? God, this is so dumb. It's just. Anyways, but my favorite part is coming up. They find an alien's head, they find an engineer's head, which is the aliens, and they take it back to the ship, and they bring it back to life with electricity. That's cool. I didn't know you could do that. It's been dead for 2,000 years or so. They bring it in, they stick a couple corn cob things in his head, run a little juice to him from some C batteries, and he comes awake, and then his head explodes.
And can you imagine how surprised that engineer would have been 2,000 years later,
right?
Being like, whoa, I didn't expect that.
I didn't expect you to wake me up with electricity. Oh, it doesn't make any sense. And no one in the film respects quarantine. That's a huge part of it. Everybody gets hurt and sick. And, of course, that's part of Aliens, I guess. There's surgery pods that anybody can use. Surgery pods, anybody can use them. You can jump in and say, hey, take this alien out of me. And they're like, okay. And David, boy, I'm getting tired even talking about this. David is so smart that he can figure out how to run the alien ship with a flute. He figures out their flute language for piloting ships really, really quickly, like, 20 minutes. And then he figures out how to speak their language because he studied, I guess, he noticed the way they were pointing. He's like, oh, I know the way they're pointing in these pictures. That means they speak Sumerian or something. It doesn't even make sense. One of the things that frustrates me about this movie, and I joked about it earlier, is they destroy the space jockey mystery by making the space jockey an engineer in a suit.
Yeah.
The engineer is just basically this ugly human dude, this big jacked ugly human dude, but he jumps into this suit and then he's a space jockey to pilot the ship. It's like, that doesn't even make any sense. It does not make sense. It's like they didn't have an idea there, but also it's like we really didn't need to have an idea there because this is LV-223 and the space jockey was an LV-426. You could have just not addressed that, right? There could have been,
Right.
could have tied it together some other way. Why do they have moons that are pretty darn similar with entrances that are pretty darn similar with spaceships that are basically the same, but it's not the same planet? Like, oh, come on, Ridley. What? Oh, and the thing is, it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. It looks like it was made with $1 trillion budget. I mean, I love Fassbender's acting so much, but yet it still is horrible.
Yeah, I mean, one of my big complaints about the movie is it is a plot-driven film, not a character-driven film. You know, nobody, and you alluded to this in several of your dumb things, nobody makes a logical choice in this movie.
No.
They're only making choices because that's the next thing that needs to happen in order to profess whatever philosophy Ridley Scott and Damien Lindelof are trying to sell. And I found that extremely frustrating while watching the movie. But here's my question, Dave, and I've been mulling this over since I've seen Prometheus, and I'm curious what your take on this is. Would you have liked this movie more, maybe even like fully committed to being like, wow, that's a good movie, if it had nothing to do with Alien? If it was just a science fiction story about creation, about journeying, about discovery, and it did not touch the mythology or the xenomorph, what would you think of the movie then?
I don't know. I think I'll go in another direction. Say I might have liked it even less because at least I like that world that it's set in, even if it's just kind of like a wrecking ball to certain parts of it. And I don't like creation stories like this. I generally avoid them, and I might not have even watched it because I just don't like that whole, alien creators type stuff. Now, when it's as inept as this is in that particular part, it's kind of funny, right? But I don't know. That sort of, let's take the creation story and let's turn it into aliens, especially these aliens, which are pretty unimpressive dudes. I mean, yeah, I don't know. That's a good question.
I will go out on a limb and say I think I might have enjoyed the movie if it had not have been connected to Alien, because it was very much a setting me up for one thing and then delivering another kind of a situation. But I agree 100% with everything that you identified, everything you talked about. And yeah, I'm not a fan of this at all. It does look great, though. You're right about that.
It looks like, and Fassbender is a good actor, and that role, that villain role, which he inhabits completely. And David is interesting, right? Because unlike Ash, who was just doing what he was programmed to do, David was not programmed to do this. And I think that's kind of there's a missing piece there. It's like, why did David turn evil, right? And I think that you're kind of given an answer to that in the next movie.
Yeah.
I think you are.
Yeah.
But they should have probably answered that question in this movie too, because you're like, what, is he taking orders from someone? He's acting on his own initiative. Why? Why is he showing initiative like this? Because synthetics never did that. And they kind of answer that in the next movie. But yeah, and I thought meeting Wayland was cool, and I thought Guy Pearce as Wayland was actually good casting. Bad makeup. I mean, but you don't make people look good when you age them up. It never really works, I don't think. You'd asked me this question once, and that was, what does this film really say about faith? Yeah. When you'd first watched it, you said, man, I'm still trying to figure out what this says about faith and religion. Did you ever answer that question?
Not to my satisfaction. I will say the closest I got is the movie makes an effort to really make a connection to mythology. And, it borrows a lot from the myth of Prometheus, which is obviously where they got the name of the ship and the name of the movie. So
it's about Connor Prometheus, the guy who invented matches in 1724. He brought fire.
Yes.
Before that, there was no fire.
Right. 1724.
Only history buffs know that kind of stuff. But
yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the right year too. So
yeah, Connor myth is 17 something 24.
Yeah. So in that aspect of it, and like the idea of what was Naomi? I don't know how to say her name. The main female character,
Numi?
Shaw, was that her name?
Shaw, yes.
Yeah. So and then like the whole aspect of Shaw.
Elizabeth Shaw.
Yeah, Elizabeth Shaw. Like the whole aspect of her being the only religious person on the ship, and then even after this discovery of these aliens that planted the seed and blah blah blah, it still does not shake her faith. Like I feel like there's a cool story in there, but I do not feel like Prometheus hits enough of the beats to deliver a cool story. And I don't know if that was a situation where Scott or Lindoff was like, oh, well, we want to keep it vague so that people can bring their own interpretation to it, or if it was just like, we're honestly not interested in that aspect of the story. We're interested in the engineer, because that is really where this movie spends its time.
I would say that it says absolutely nothing about faith. I don't think it has a cogent idea about most of the things that it brings up. And I think faith is no different, because there's the scene where the guy's so upset that they went there and they wanted to meet their makers. And I'm rolling my eyes, listeners. And when they got there, they were all dead, and he was so disappointed. And I'm like, you landed on a planet that's basically like hellish. What did you think you were going to meet? Like, your makers were going to like, oh, I love living in this hellish world, right? Nothing made sense, right? Even the conclusion that these were their makers. Yeah. Made no sense. Agreed. Right? So I think that it just is just a bunch of illogical leaps to try to get to an ending where David gets access to the black goo so that he can create the alien is really what the whole point of the movie for the writers were. I think Scott probably had bigger, more grandiose ideas, but he picked a very bad writer in David Lindelof. Well, I can't say the name, but that guy. And I think that and it ends with Shaw and a very broken David, because androids don't ever make it through this movie, like through these movies in one piece. It seems like. Making their way off of LV-223 on their way to, I don't know. I guess they're going to go figure out where the engineers are. It's kind of vague.
Yeah, well, from the star map thing, they're like, oh, that must be the engineer's home planet, because David, he pointed at it. He can speak the language, he can play the flute, so he knows where they live as well.
I thought maybe he accidentally pointed at it. Like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. That's what he would have done. Sorry, Mom, I pointed at this star. Now you think that's where I guess we have to go there.
Well,
she's like, yeah, pretty sure God's there. You pointed at it.
But he
wasn't here.
In the next movie,
left.
we get some of the answers to these questions, whether we wanted them or not.
We do.
So, Alien Covenant. Do you want to take us off on this one?
Sure. 11 years after Prometheus, 22 years before Alien. Of course, directed by Sir Ridley. Lindelof does not come back to write. Fellows named John Logan and Dante Harper, who I'm not familiar with any of their work. I didn't do a ton of research. But it's about a colony ship going on their way to build a new colony on a distant world with a crew of 2,000 colonists, with a synthetic named Walter, who looks just like David, but with darker hair, and who talks without a British accent. He's like the American David. And Fassbender's dual roles with Walter and David. They've got a crew that they experience an accident on board. And there's a tragedy, and then they get people die, including their captain, and then the second in command takes over, who in a kind of ham-fisted way is a religious person, but he's extremely self-conscious about his religious. Yeah. He's like, oh, they didn't want me to be the captain because I'm religious, and they won't trust me because I'm religious, and he really kind of digs in on that, very on the nose, right? Yes, we get it. You're religious. Well, they're recovering from this tragedy, and then they get a signal. And the signal is it's not your typical distress signal. It's a John Denver song,
which they all know. And everybody,
they all know, right? Oh yeah, right.
Everybody's familiar with this song.
In 2100 or whatever it is. I mean, it's really close to that. They're real. That would be like us, like some weird vaudeville song playing from the turn of the century. Oh, I know that one. That was, I don't know. Beating My Stick on the Dirt. That's what they used to do. That's a vaudeville song called Beating My Stick on the Dirt by I don't know. I don't even know what. It's such a bizarre idea. I don't even know what to make up.
Yeah.
But yeah, they all knew this John Denver song. I was like, So they got this. Oh, that's a human, John. We gotta track the signal down. Nobody wants to get back in their pods because of the bad accident they had. So they go to a planet called Origai 6, where they encounter a very Earth-like planet. They encounter aliens on it, right? They encounter the xenomorph and versions of it. And ultimately, they encounter David, and David is being really, really creepy. After about being with David about 30 seconds, the David that is in Covenant, he's gotten super creepy.
Yeah.
In just like ick. Like I would not be hanging out with this guy for very long. And Walter's like, I will talk to him. Like oh okay, yeah, one robot to another. You guys work it out, right? It's an okay movie, and it's got some interesting stuff. I think that I'll put it like this. The first act is pretty good while they're in space and they're fighting xenomorphs before David shows up. The second act is all about David, and I still like it somewhat a little bit because I like Fassbender, but this is not a great portrayal and it's not particularly well written. And the third act gets into more traditional fighting aliens type stuff, and it's pretty good. So I think the second act is a problem. I will say this, Danny McBride is in it. I never thought I would say this. That guy can actually act. He's a good, he really pulled off the character of Tennessee, and I felt his sadness, his rage, but still, he had his moments of competency, which is not frequent in these movies. If your name is not Ripley, you're not competent, is generally how it goes. But, it's good but not great. It doesn't have the beauty of Prometheus, but it also doesn't have the intense stupidity of it either. So, it's okay.
Yeah. I will agree 100% that the first act is amazing. And when I started watching this movie, I was like, oh my goodness, I am really enjoying this, because it fixed that big mistake with Prometheus, which is suddenly this movie is very character driven. You can understand the motivations for everybody, why they're doing it, what, they're making logical choices based on the circumstances that have happened. I'm totally with it. And I will also say that the spaceship effects in this movie are seriously, seriously good. Maybe,
it looks great.
Maybe unmatched. I mean, they're really? So good. They look so amazing. Now, the alien effects in the movie, not so much. But
fine.
Well, they're a little too cartoony, in my opinion. Anyway, but the spaceship
still better than Alien 3.
That's fair.
We didn't mention that. They look rough
fair.
in Alien 3.
But
of course,
the spaceships look phenomenal in this movie.
They do look good.
But the story is very frustrating to me. And again, David is the root of that cause for me, because David creates the xenomorphs because he was bored. Like, I guess that's what we're supposed to take away from it.
So I think that there's a couple of things that are shown in this film that help us understand David's motivation. Certainly better than in the previous movie, Prometheus. The one is the opening scene, which shows the birth of David, and that his creator, Wayland, talked down to him, even though David is superior to him. And David lets him know that you're going to die and I'm going to live, and but he still is treated like a servant by Wayland. I think that creates something in him. He also talks about, Walter talks about how that he was made to be, Walter was made to be less human because David creeped people out because he was so human. Which kind of leads you into this thought of, okay, did they create him with the ability to have his own feelings, his own initiative, right? So I think there's a little bit more there to him. There's a little bit of backstory is helpful, but still, right? David creating the alien, like, what are you going to do with it? Kill everybody? You want everyone to die? And maybe that's what, maybe he's just a nihilist, right? Or nihilist, or what, I'm not sure the right way to say it. I don't use that in conversation very often. Except, when I'm at the Big Lebowski conventions and doing Big Lebowski cosplay.
Well, yeah, of course.
You can see the ending coming from a jillion miles away, right? That's David who made his way up into the spaceship. That he's going to be doing something. He's going to pop the aliens out of somewhere, right? And that's, it's going to continue with that story. It's okay, but it's not.
That goes back to what I said earlier. I don't even remember which film we were talking about when I said it, but I just fundamentally do not like the xenomorphs having an origin story. Like, I think that cheapens them, and it makes them completely uninteresting.
I agree. I would not have had an origin story for them.
Yeah.
I would not have done a lot of the things that they did in Prometheus, but you could still assemble that cast and that aesthetic and make a great movie.
Yeah.
With everything but a totally different script.
Yeah, agree.
Sounds pretty simple, I guess, when you say it that way. Just write another movie.
Well, can you believe after all this, they're still making Alien movies?
That's right. 7 years later.
We've got one more, Alien Romulus.
One more.
Now, Dave,
20 years.
I have said my piece on this movie. I did a short about it not too long ago.
You did.
I like it. I think it's a more simple film. It's not trying to go with some great philosophical message. It's just a scary science fiction movie. It's competently made. It's not trying to be something that it's not. And I gave it credit for that. What did you think of Romulus?
Yeah, it's set 20 years after Alien, so we're jumping around in the timeline. It is a proper Alien movie that does not try to have all the, like you said, the big heady ideas. And it's also trying to be a legitimate horror film too, which I think it does okay at. I think it does lean into the gore a little bit more than I would like. It doesn't need to be there, but it's a good movie. It's got a great, very likable character in Andy, who is the synthetic, right? Andy, android, get it?
Yeah.
But no, and David Johnson is fantastic. He's an actor to watch, I think, because he's really good in this movie and sells it. I'll say this, I did struggle to understand a few of the characters through their super thick accents. There was one character in particular, like I could not understand he was like Boomhauer from King of the Hill. I couldn't understand anything he was saying. It was so thick, but I really struggled with a lot of them. But I think that I think it was a good movie. I think the return of Ian Holmes as return. I guess I shouldn't say it that way. But Ian Holmes recreated as Rook, another android who is there on this space station. That's kind of neat. He looked pretty rough.
Yeah, he did.
It looked weird.
Yeah.
I know it was a mix of digital and practical, and I don't know. It was definitely in that uncanny valley type area where it's like, yeah, this is bizarre. The voice was great. The stuff they did with his voice, though, they're really getting close with those AI voices. They are really, it's pretty darn scary how good it is. But
if we're going to talk about him being recreated for this film, I would argue, what is that getting you? Like, would the story have changed? Would the movie have changed if that was just a different actor and it was a torn apart, synthetic creature there that you understand from, 5 previous films that these guys are bad. They're only trying to get the creature for Wayland. Did it have to be Ian Holm?
I think that they were trying to get that market of 50-year-old men who saw the original in the theaters. No, I'm joking. I didn't have a problem with it. I get what you're saying. I think, though, that when you're trying to create the connections to the Alien movie, and you're probably also doing a little bit of damage control between Prometheus and Covenant, where they did kind of undo some of the stuff that happened in those movies or broke the lore, so to speak. I don't know. I feel like the idea of having some kind of connection there, I don't know. And if you're going to do it, doing it with the synthetic makes sense because
okay, sure.
There's dozens of ashes running around.
I'll grant you that. But if you want a connection, you've got the Alien. Like, do you need a bigger connection than that? And also, to your point,
you've got the same alien that was in Alien too, which doesn't make sense, and nothing can kill these aliens
true.
Except for a bullet out of a gun.
Yeah, no. But you've totally derailed my train of thought. Oh, what I was going to say was, but this movie makes a huge callback to Prometheus.
Where is it? Because I was looking for that, and I thought, man, I'm not seeing it, and maybe I'm just being stupid here. What is the callback?
The hybrid at the end, which is...
Oh, okay. Yes. I guess I did not. I know what you're talking about. I kind of see it. I didn't think of it. I was thinking that was more of a like an unintentional alien resurrection kind of callback, but
no, I saw Romulus before I saw Prometheus, and I only saw Prometheus when we started to plan for this podcast, and even having not seen Prometheus, when I'm in the theater watching Romulus, I'm like, oh, that's the Prometheus thing. And so, like, it read to me immediately that that's what they were doing. So I don't know that. I liked Romulus. I think it was a good film. I don't have any complaints with it, but I don't know that you can lay at its feet that it's trying to right the lore wrongs of Prometheus and Covenant. Like, I think that's a bit strong.
All right. Well, I mean, it's just, they're going to have to keep this. I think they have to, right? Or they just have to ignore and say, hey, there is no real Prometheus Covenant, right? That's its own timeline.
Well, I mean,
or
to wrap
like
this
that.
up, they're talking about Scott doing the third in his trilogy.
I know.
So
I know, which is fine with me, right? And I think that at this point, I want to see David's story end, even if I don't love what they've done with the character. I would be interested in that. Speaking of timelines, though, there is another timeline in this universe. Very briefly, the Aliens versus Predator timeline.
yes. Well,
And it is its own thing.
and which film is it? There's one of the Alien films where you see like a Predator skull. No, it's the Predator movie where you see the
Predator
alien
2.
skull. That's it.
Yep, it's
Yeah.
Predator 2 when Danny Glover's going down there. He's getting too old for this alien fight and stuff, is what Danny Glover would say. He's going down into the Predator's ship, and you see an
Yes.
alien skull.
Yeah.
And that started everything, right? And then all of a sudden, it's aliens and predators and the comic books and all that stuff. But there are 2 Alien versus Predator movies. The first one is pretty awful. When you said that Cameron liked it, I was shocked because it's not a great movie.
That's what I read.
The second one, Requiem, is bad, but it's got some charm to it, mostly because it's like okay, they just kind of went nuts and said, all right, we're gonna put like a ton of aliens in this movie, and we're gonna put like the baddest alpha predator ever who could kill a ton of aliens. And it really does this. It kind of like goes nuts, and it's like, okay, there's kind of interesting, and it also does have another alien tie-in at the end. I'm not spoiling for anybody because it doesn't really matter because this is his own timeline. But at the end, they do the military recovers a predator weapon and takes it to a scientist who is named Ms. Yatani. So I just thought that's kind of cool. It's kind of clever. And I would say if you're going to watch those movies, you don't need to watch the first one. It's terrible. The second one, for it's 90 minutes, and you'll probably have a little bit of fun with it, because it's really more of a movie about getting to see a predator kill a lot of aliens. So it's okay. But that's it. That's all I'm going to say about those because they're not that.
That's
great.
fair. So, I mean, we already talked about which do we prefer, Alien or Aliens. Like, how else do we wrap up the show? What did we figure out today?
Well, why don't we do our ranking of the alien
Ranking
movies,
of the movies.
of these movies?
Here we go.
Right? So I'll start with mine. I'll do mine. Right, number 1, Alien. Right, it's the best. It's my favorite. It's pretty easy. Number 2, controversial here. I know I'm just gonna do it. I'm gonna say Prometheus is my second favorite. I love this movie more than I hate that movie. And the next one is Aliens. Sure. Number 4, Alien 3. It's actually pretty close to Aliens for me because there are things about Alien 3 I love. And I think it's just really got a lot of interesting stuff going on without being slick at all. It's grimy. The 5th one is Alien Covenant, which I would say Alien Covenant and Alien Romulus are pretty close to being tied. 6 is Romulus for me. But there's enough going on in Covenant that I like. That it edges out Romulus, and then without saying, I think it goes without saying much, but Resurrection is dead last.
All right. Well, here's my list. Alien is number 1. Aliens is number 2. Number 3 is going to surprise you because it's actually Romulus.
Okay.
Which is not credit to Romulus. That's actually saying how bad the series has gone, in my opinion.
Okay.
So Romulus is number 3. Number 4, I will put Alien Covenant. Even though I thought it ended in a disaster, there are elements of this movie I genuinely liked, so that gives it number 4. Number 5, I will do Alien 3. Number 6, Prometheus, and number 7, Alien Resurrection.
Well, at least Prometheus beat Alien Resurrection. That's there's a something small there. What did we figure out? We figured out this is a very uneven series that maybe should have ended after the second movie.
Maybe.
As much as I like Prometheus, but I mean, obviously they were trying to squeeze every bit of juice out of it they could. But man, it goes all over the place. I don't know. I do wish we would have gotten an Alien 3 that would have followed, Newt and I forgot his
Hicks.
name all of a sudden. Hicks. Why? Hudson and Hicks, man, they're just awfully close for some reason. It does that to me. And then we would have gotten an Alien 4 that was more like Alien 3, kind of closed out Ripley's story. Yeah. But, you know, I mean, you can't review something on what it wasn't and what you wanted.
Sure.
You got to review it for what it is. So, but I think we figured out, my take, what I learned is, man, this is an uneven series, and there's almost as much bad in it as there is good. But it's still a lot of fun. It's still interesting. It's an interesting world. I'd like to know a little bit more about the world.
It's an interesting world as long as they don't explain too much. I want to go back to that wonder and awe of the beginning of Alien and seeing the space jockey and being on that planet and being introduced to all this new stuff. Like, that's the feeling I want from an Alien movie. Yep. And I fear that what everyone takes from what they think the audience wants from an Alien movie is horror and gore. I feel like that's the lesson that Hollywood learned, and it was the wrong lesson. But there's a lot here to like. Even in the bad films, it's visually very arresting, very interesting. You know, it's going to make you think whether you like what you're thinking about or not. It's going to do that for you. So uneven is the correct word to use when talking about the Alien series.
Thanks for watching Prometheus and Covenant, so we could do this.
Yeah,
that was a big sacrifice.
I did not know going in how big of a sacrifice that would be, but yes, you're welcome, and I'll do it again before the podcast is over. So, but where can they find us if they want to hear more of our crazy thoughts?
Well, go to your computer or get your computer controlling flute. If you've got one of those, if you have that, you can play a little tune. Go check us out at www.twomiddleageguys.com. That's the numeral 2, middleageguys.com. Or check us out on Facebook. Just search for Two Middle Age Guys. You'll find us. We'll come right up. We post all of our new episodes. We're also on Twitter, X, but, you know, we don't do a whole lot there. So just check us out on Facebook. It's easier for everybody if you just focus on that. All the new episodes, all of our old episodes can be found on the website. Send us an email, send us a message, and let us know what you think, and we'll read it on the air, and we won't make fun of you. We'll gush over you for actually communicating with us, dear listener.
Yes, indeed. But until then, have a good one.
Bye-bye.